everyone, welcome back to another layout update. Let's go ahead and look at what's changed since last time. So if we start over here on this side of the layout, we're over on Belmont. So this is the very top of the layout here, the top of the grade where it crests and then it goes back into the staging room. If you remember from the last layout update, which was, just a little over a week ago now, everything in here had yet to be scenicked, and it's still incomplete, but I at least now have the dirt along the whole upper level. So last week I had probably about half of the dirt done, and then I took a couple days and just finished the rest of it up here. So dirt minus this little spot here. So I still need to do some plaster work over where this overpass is going to go. So that doesn't have dirt, but basically everything else, starting from that corner, sweeping up on the other side of the peninsula, which we'll see, and including all of this stuff all along here on Belmont, now has dirt on it. I did a couple layers. I did my base layer of dirt, which is sort of like this grayish tan color, and then I came back in and I added some sort of slightly different colored and a bit ballasted dirt for the right-of-way next to the tracks here, which I haven't yet drawn the tire tracks in yet, but once I get the ballast down and grass and stuff, this will be very clearly marked as the right-of-way access for maintenance of way vehicles. Another thing you might notice is that the rocks over here are now painted. So that was something else I was working on. These have now been painted. I did a few washes on these, and now you can kind of see the different styles of rocks we have here. So this is one of your more standard Crawford rock cuts that has sort of a smooth finish that was clearly machine cut, and there's a bit of erosion effect to it. But that's very different than what we have here in the trench for the tunnel. This is much more rugose, if you will, and I would imagine that they cut this just using dynamite. Actually, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm talking about. So who knows how they cut both of those? There's probably an expert out there. I don't wanna put my foot in my mouth. But the point is, they look different, and I tried to model that. So I think I got the color somewhat correct, and I did a few more washes on these just to bring out the definition and the depth on those rocks than I did on some of the others. Here's a closer look at that rock cut. This is one I highlighted last week, or in the last update. I think it had already been painted, but you can see it blends pretty nicely with the dirt now as well. Now if we come around the end of the peninsula and walk into the other aisleway here, you can see the dirt continues. Here's more proof. I actually did it, I'm not lying. And then you'll most notably see that I have continued the grass as well. So this will be a pretty cool comparison down here. If you remember from last week, I keep saying that, I need to stop saying that, but I'm just referencing the last video. You will remember that basically above, you can kind of see how there's two levels there, right? There's that lower rock cut, it's the same rock cut, but then there's that upper portion added. And if you remember, beforehand, I had actually already done the grass down on this first level, sort of where my finger is. And then everything above that was an addition because I have decided to cover that upper track that now goes into the tunnel. So that was just exposed paper just a few days ago. And then I did the dirt, and then I tried to blend that as best as I could and as cleanly as I could into the existing scenery without messing up that grass. And you can see I've now since gone back in with the grass, and I think it blended in fairly well. So now this whole slope, I think, sort of looks more uniform and like it probably should have. If you look really closely, you actually can sort of see where that division is, where that line is. However, that's not going to be too important because what I haven't done yet is installed trees, and that is about where I was going to put trees to begin with. So there will be a nice little tree line that'll hide any of that definition there. And so that'll get rid of that issue. And then there's not really much else to talk about over here, but it's certainly taking shape with the grass down on this end, so I'm really happy about that. It all blended very nicely. So basically, where my finger is there and up, there was no grass. So I worked the grass this way after the dirt. These two hills here did have grass applied to them, but then after this road here, there was really nothing to the left of it. So as I pan this way, this is all new work. So I had to do the grass out front here on the slope. You can see it falls off and towards the aisle. So you got some ballast that's clearly run off the side that then sort of blends into the grass there. Worked the grass up onto these cuts as well, and then also back there. So there's some sort of tufts between the right-of-way and where the cut starts at the bottom. And then panning this way, this was somewhat of an effort just because the scene is so deep. I did get all the grass over here, and I got it pretty much all the way around our road here. But then I did have to stop because I actually ran out of the grass material. So I'm gonna have to do another scenery order and get more static grass. So I'll have to continue basically from that slope on and then do the other side of the peninsula, obviously. But I think it's certainly looking good. I like the color of it. And you'll also see, it's tough to see in the video, but in person, there's actually kind of a texture to it. I tend to blend the grasses, so I use a combination of woodland scenics fibers. Those are anywhere from 1 to 3 millimeters in length, and they're sort of muted tones, so they have a very pale coloration to them. And then you'll see I also have some silfloor fibers in there in some richer green tones like summer green and spring green, and those are anywhere from 4 to 6 millimeters long. So the majority of the coloration you see here is due to the woodland scenics fibers, and the reason I include them is because they're smaller. They actually fill in the gaps much better, and I think they populate the ground a little better, and it makes the grass fibers look richer when they're planted on the ground. But one of the cool effects you get, if we get at the right angle, if you look sort of at the top of the hill where the horizon is, you can actually see where those longer, brighter green fibers start to sort of poke out of the grass layer. And I was hoping that this would sort of simulate some new growth or some greener grass perhaps in the spring that's popping through the old dead grass that was left from the previous season. Now if we step back, I think things look pretty good as they are now, but it's definitely pretty plain, right? And obviously I'm not even talking about trees. Trees will be put in there, as will bushes, and I think that'll add some variation, but I just feel like the pale green grass, although I think a fairly accurate representation of this area, is almost a little too dull. And I think that's especially true when we start to get to the boundaries or the borders between dirt and grass. And it was just a little too monotonous. So this was something I had planned to do already, but I sort of accelerated my plans. And just today I made some grass tufts. And they're really easy to make. I just grabbed a piece of parchment paper or perhaps wax paper, I don't remember which one I grabbed, but both work. And then took some white glue, just Elmer's glue, dropped it on there, and then I applied static grass just like I would to the layout. And then in a few hours they're ready to peel off. So you can see I've made a number of these. None of them are glued down right now. I was just sort of testing the placement and making sure that the color looked good. And I don't want to overdo it too much because I think it'll look forced if I do grass tufts all over the place. But I think if you look at prototype photos, it seems to me that usually around these intersections where there's like a corner, like a 90-degree angle, or where a dirt road meets the grass, there's usually quite a few tufts that look almost richer or more full, thicker, whatever word you want to use, than the main grass. So if this is the field of grass, these are usually deeper in tone and a little thicker. So I'm trying to sort of concentrate them in these corners here, and then perhaps run a few along the edge of the road. I still think I need plenty more, but you can see that that starts to add a bit of variation and realism to the scene. And once I get the ballast and the bushes and trees in, I think this will really start to take shape. And as for details, I do want to mention that this is ranch country, so I do want to put in sort of a barbed wire fence somewhere along here that comes up to the edge of that rock cut, which I think will look pretty cool. And we've already seen this angle, but here's sort of a look stepping back. You can see I put very few grass tufts here, but I think it actually really ties this little ledge together, and I'm actually happy with how this looks right now. And then once again, if we walk to this intersection here, you'll see just a few grass tufts. I'll probably come back in and add more, but I think it looks better than if they were not there. Alright, the final thing I have to show you is a new set of cars here. I picked up 4 Atlas Master Gunderson Multimax auto racks. That's sort of a mouthful. And these are great cars. I actually probably shouldn't be buying cars right now. This isn't exactly something that I have in the layout budget right now, but I did this for a reason, because I started to get anxious about the tunnel over there. At the time of building it, I actually did not have any auto racks. So even though I built the tunnel to proper clearances and things like that, and I tested it with auto racks, I started to get worried with the length of the cars and the curvature within the tunnel that maybe they wouldn't fit. So I sort of had my fingers crossed when I ordered these that they would A, run well through the tunnel, B, wouldn't look too stupid on my 26-inch minimum radius in a few places, and C, when they go through the tunnel, there's actually an S-curve within it as well, and I was hoping that they wouldn't jackknife, or if they had smaller cars in between, that they wouldn't pull them off the tracks. And as it turns out, they actually run flawlessly. They're fantastic runners, they don't derail, they don't tip over, anything like that. I've got super elevated curves on fairly tight radius trackage, and they handle it all. So I'm very happy with this purchase. They're fantastically detailed on the ends, and especially the underframe. There's lots of piping detail, and I really love the paint schemes too. They're really just cool cars, I think. I like the thicker metal band on either end. They sort of differentiate them from your older auto racks. And of course I had to pick one up in the orange BNSF scheme as well. So anyway, that's really all I've got for you in this video. So if you guys want to see anything else, I always appreciate video suggestions. But other than that, that's all I've got. So again, thanks so much. Stay tuned, and I will see you next time.